Today is the 12th of May 2014. My name is Sonny Leong, and this interview is for the Ming London Institute, which is Chinese Birthforce Heritage Project. Could I begin by asking your name?
Sonny Leong.
And where were you born?
I was born in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia.
If you could tell me a little bit about your family.
My family is a typical sort of Malaysian Chinese family. My dad was born in Malaysia. He's probably the third generation Chinese in Malaysia. His heritage really is from southern China. Whereas my mother's heritage is quite interesting. She has got Chinese, Portuguese, and Thai blood in her. Both of them were educated in English school, so we spoke English at home. And when we were growing up, it was very much along the lines of the English education system. We went to an English school run by the Jesuit brothers, sort of Roman Catholic schools. And I'm the eldest of five. I've got 4 brothers and 1 sister. So 3 brothers and 1 sister, yeah.
So are you Roman Catholic in your religion as well?
Personally, yes, but my family is pretty multiracial, if I can say. My parents are Buddhist. One of my brothers Muslim. A couple of brothers are non-believers, and the sister is Protestant.
So you would say you have quite a mixture of multicultural?
Very multicultural, and I feel sorry for my mother, especially when it comes to Chinese New Year, because the amount of various Chinese dishes that she has to cook.
That's true. I can imagine. So you say you're of 5 siblings, and your mother and father, what work did they do?
My dad was a administrator, and he joined a Scottish company, and I suppose grew himself within the company to become a director of the company into import-export trading. Whereas my mother was a woman of leisure. She was a housewife. I suppose she did work in the early days before she had children. But since having children, I mean, she was very much a housewife. Yeah.
So both your parents are British?
No, both my parents are Malaysians. Yeah, I'm British, yes.
So did they arrive to the UK first, or did you?
No, in fact, my parents are still in Malaysia. My parents are currently, both of them are still alive, and they live in Ipoh, which is a small provincial city between Kuala Lumpur and Penang. As far as the family is concerned, I'm the only member of the family who's here in UK, and I'm British.
So when did you travel to the UK?
I came here in the 70s to study A-levels, and then I went to college. My first degree was in economics, and I did law degree. And then I started working in a law publishing company.
So was that your first job?
My very first job was actually, like most student type of jobs, it was basically to earn anything. And I remember my first job was data entry. It was pretty menial, inputting data on a system. And I'm trying to remember how much I got paid for that. It wasn't very much. It was like maybe £100 a month or something like that. But it was good because we had money left over to buy beers at college. So it was pretty good pay, actually.
So how many jobs do you think you've been through until your current one?
How many jobs I've been through? Well, not many, actually. I must say probably no more than 3 or 4. When I finished my law studies and all that, as you know, most people have to earn and to support themselves, and that's what I did. So I joined a law publishing company to work on their editing process. And since then, I started my law publishing business in 1982, and then grew it to be one of UK's largest academic law publisher, and I sold the business in 2006.
How did you travel to the UK?
Oh, I flew here. I mean, I didn't come on a boat or anything. How much did I pay for it? No, I got no idea how much I paid for it. It must have cost quite a fair bit, I suppose. Yeah, back then. Yeah, I flew here. I came on my own. Yeah, once, enrolled in various colleges. You obviously met students from all over the world. That's the beauty about UK. You do get to meet students from everywhere. And then you start making friends, and then you have your own group of friends and all that. So that's something that I think UK is very unique in the sense that people from all over the world, it's very much a melting pot.
So before you came to the UK, did you always have a plan that you would come here, or was it a spontaneous decision?
I had a vague idea that I wanted to finish my education in the UK. I went through various phases. I didn't really know what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an accountant. I wanted to be a lawyer. I know two things I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be a doctor. So that was easily taken care of initially because I didn't study any science subjects. I did many art subjects, so that helped. Secondly, is I didn't want to be an engineer. I mean, physics was all right, but it wasn't really my thing. I'm more arts person, humanities, social sciences. And law was something that I fell into and I really enjoyed it.
So what were your first impressions of the UK and London? You mentioned that you wanted to come and to study because it's very multi-ethnic. You meet loads of different people around the world. But what were your first impressions? Were you anxious? Were you apprehensive?
Well, initially, I mean, obviously, there was definitely a culture shock in terms of weather. But in terms of the basic etiquette, I think it's pretty much similar in most countries. It can be a very lonely place initially when you arrive and you don't have any friends and all that. And the British are not very good in actually opening up themselves to newcomers and all that. So you get your own group of friends in halls that you meet, and then you establish a relationship. I think it's very short-lived. You get to know the place pretty quickly. And English being spoken everywhere is obviously very helpful because you don't have that language problem. So I wasn't apprehensive. It was just a new environment.
So would you say you had an easy time?
Yes, I think so. And I think it depends on the individual character as well. I think if you're outgoing, and I think you can basically fall in place everywhere, whether it's Australia, Canada, or UK. But if you're reserved, then it can be challenging.
And you say that you spoke English, but that wasn't an issue for you. Were you very strong in speaking the English language because your parents were Malaysian, so it's a very strong English?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we all did sort of English exams. I mean, the O levels, A levels, and all that. And I mean, I regret not being able to speak Chinese, Mandarin, because we weren't sent to Chinese schools, or we weren't encouraged to take up Chinese as a language. It was basically English. So yes, there wasn't any problem in speaking English in terms of grammar, vocabulary, colloquially. So it was all right. Yeah.
So you found accommodation through halls. Did you live anywhere else while you were a student afterwards? So how did you find your first accommodation that was around?
I mean, initially, obviously, it's halls of residence, and then subsequently after that, you find places, student digs. A student, I mean, you can't be very choosy, so your houses or flats are not very nice in the sense of the area and also the decoration and all that. So yeah, you move in with students from other parts of the world, and you just move from one place to another.
And what motivated you to work in politics? You said you were very passionate and you enjoyed it. But, what
is it social justice and fairness? That's two things that drive me. I think we're very lucky in the UK, whereby there is definitely freedom of expression, speech, assembly, as opposed to many other countries, more so in many Commonwealth countries, where the various rights are still restricted. I think one has to ask is, what makes you angry? What makes you angry, that you're so angry that you want to do something about it, and that's where politics come in. What makes me angry is discrimination. Why should someone be discriminated because of his gender, race, ethnicity, or whatever it is? Everyone should be afforded sort of opportunity to be the best they can be. And given the right framework, they should be able to excel themselves. So inequality, discrimination really, really gets me up. Yeah.
So you've always been a political person, do you think?
Yes, in fact, it was funny because I remember having a long chat with my dad. My dad is 85 this year. This is not too long ago. He said to me very frankly, he said, son, when you were growing up, I knew that you will get into politics, and I'm really glad that you stayed in UK and not in Malaysia. And I said, why? He says, if you're in Malaysia, you'd probably be arrested by now. So, which is quite charming. Yeah, I mean, ever since I was young, even in school, I had this urge in me to see that people are treated fairly, and it just sort of took it from there. And I suppose studying law gives you a certain foundation to understand the rights and wrongs of things.
Would you ever see yourself working outside of the UK? Because you said if you work in Malaysia in law, it would be much harder for you because you're very passionate about what you work in. Do you see yourself?
Well, the thing is, I mean, look, when I set up Cavendish Publishing, it was a UK-based company, but we exported our books to over 200 countries, and we had offices in Australia, and we had representative in the Caribbean, the Pacific, and all that. These days, I think everyone is actually a global citizen, and whether one works in UK, in New York, in Australia, in Singapore, Malaysia, as long as the work that one does, one doesn't compromise one's belief and principle, then yes, you can work anywhere. Take, for example, if I can I do my job in Malaysia? Yes, but I may need to be very careful in what I say, certain things, because I don't think I can criticize the government of Malaysia. If I do, then I have to be responsible for my actions and perhaps pay the necessary price for it. But having said that, I mean, when business is business, and politics are politics, so sometimes one has to differentiate between work and politics.
Very true. Did you have to undertake any further personal qualifications in order to reach the position that you are in today, other than leaving university?
I mean, it's a continuing education, isn't it? I mean, look, when you go through university, you get necessary skills in the subject areas that you study in. And after that, I mean, look, no one taught me how to be a manager. Yeah, you can buy all the various management books and read up about it, or you can attend short management classes and all that. But at the end of the day, I've got this motto, and I pass it on to my colleagues. I say, look, in life, what you put into it is what you take out of it. The more you put into it, the more you take out of it. Just like any employees I employ. I mean, I've employed over several hundred employees. And one of the things I always tell them is, look, I'm giving you an environment for you to better yourself. If you want to work 2 hours a day, then that's up to you. But if you want to work 20 hours a day, then obviously you'll take more out of it. So I mean, all the people that have worked for me have benefited a lot, because I give them the opportunity for them to excel, to find out what makes them different. And now that they've gone on to do other things and be leaders of companies and all that, is the most satisfying thing I can ever feel.
So how long have you worked in this field for?
Oh God, in publishing, well over 30 odd years. I mean, 30, 35 years thereabouts. And publishing is a very interesting sector. And when I got into publishing, I mean, I didn't, you know, when you finish your exams and your degree and all that, you just say, oh, I want to be a publisher. I mean, I didn't know what publishers were in those places at the time. But now that I know what it is, because I'm in it, it is one of those industry that is people-oriented. You've got to like people. And people in the publishing industry are generally very nice people. However, there's a big downside to publishing. It's still very much an Oxbridge, or rather white Oxbridge domain. It's changing. But publishers have to be dragged, screaming and kicking, to the 21st century. Number one, in terms of technology is one thing. Secondly, in terms of embracing diversity and all that. And I must say, I've done a lot of firsts in publishing. I was the first non-white council member of the Publishers Association. I'm currently the Hon President of the Independent Publishers Guild. I'm just thinking whether I am the only Chinese publisher that have been chair of the Independent Publishers Guild. I probably am. I mean, so there are various firsts, little firsts that I've done, which I feel very proud about. But at the same time, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sort of break the glass ceiling and say, look, doesn't mean that you're Chinese, you can't be a leader of a publishing company or a leader in the sector itself. I've shown it that can be done. And I want many more non-white to follow my footsteps. And hopefully, you know, there are more to come.
So do you think you'll see this change in your lifetime? Like how long do you think it will?
I think publishing is slowly changing. I mean, look, one of the things that I'm involved within the Independent Publishers Guild is to encourage diversity in its management structure in publishing houses. It's in publishing, there's a lot of women in publishing, but very few women managers in publishing. But that's changing now. What we should be looking at is not so much woman, gender, but also race. And I think now, but we need to encourage more non-white to get into publishing. And rather than sort of the usual career like medicine, accounting, law, engineering, think of something else. I mean, the creative industry is a fantastic sector, whereas publishing, music, fashion is white. And UK, we are the leaders in the creative sector. We export more English language books than any other country in the world. Our music scene is probably the best in the world. Our fashion designers is probably the best in the world now. And our computer games designers, they're fantastic. They're all over the place. So as a sector, the creative industry sector, the ethnic minority should really look at it and say, look, how much can I bring to this sector itself? And I always tell my publishing friends, I say, you guys are missing the trick. I said, what if I were running your business, I would employ a non-white publisher and publish books that the non-ethnic minority would want to buy. I mean, yeah, you can publish Harry Potter, you can publish so many other stuff, but there are other things that the ethnic minority market would need. And I think you guys are missing something here. So there is a big, big gap in that market.
That's what I was just about to say. There's a gap in the market. You say you employ hundreds of employees. Do you try and promote, you say you promote multicultural, so how many Chinese
Well, I mean, in all my various businesses and all that, look, I don't really count. I mean, I probably no more than 10. I have various Chinese and all that. But I would say that as far as ethnicity within my employees, it's pretty multiracial. I mean, we've got people from India, Pakistan, Nigeria, obviously Eastern Europe and all that. So it's pretty multicultural, multiracial, really.
So in terms of politics, do you think that there's a better representation and involvement in the UK British Chinese people?
I hope so. Look, we are the only English language country in the whole world that do not have any Chinese representation in the House of Commons. Australia has got elected Chinese representation in their parliament. New Zealand, a population of 3 million, have got Chinese elected politicians. Canada, America, and UK, we just don't have any. I think it's changing. Look, I've been in the sort of British politics scene for the last 15, 20 years. The Chinese community, we are probably 10 to 15 years behind our Black and Asian community. If you look at the Black and Asian community, to them, they have representation in the House of Commons, House of Lords, local councils, and so on and so forth. The Chinese, we have a long way to go to catch up even. But having said that, I'm very encouraged by the young British Chinese who are now very eager to look at politics as a career, and I use the word career in inverted commas, because in those days, I think probably still so, is when a Chinese person tells the parents and says, look, I want to get into politics, I think the first thing they say is, don't be crazy, that's not for you, go and do something else. So rather than encouraging, it's discouraging, and rather than being positive about it, is all the negative about it. But I said earlier that I'm very encouraged because the number of Chinese graduates that are doing politics, political science, philosophy, economics. Now, when you do subjects like that, you must have an interest in politics. And also, getting into politics doesn't mean that you have to be a frontline politician. You can work in think tanks, you can work in unions, you can also work for politicians as a case worker or a researcher. The House of Commons, I do not know how many Chinese there who are working as researchers. I know there are, but not many, but we should be encouraging more. I think the speakers, through his work, is actually encouraging more ethnic minority to actually work for MPs and all that. So that's very good. Yes, we must, every one of us, in fact, we should be encouraging each other to sort of put ourselves forward. Because I always say, if you, the Chinese, do not stand up to be counted and speak out for your own community or for yourself, no one else is going to speak up for you. The blacks and Asian politicians, they've got enough issues on the plate without worrying about the Chinese community. But yeah, nevertheless, everyone should be encouraged to actually participate politics in their own way, because it can be politics with a lower p, with a small p. You can be involved in politics in your local environment, by being a governor of a school, by being a non-executive director of some of the local organizations, or can be a lay magistrate. So there's so many things that one can get involved in public life. And I think what the Chinese community needs is a bit of education, but a lot of push. Trouble is, no one wants to put themselves forward. It's always let someone else do it. So sometimes they've got to sort of say, look, enough is enough, we're going to do it ourselves.
So would you say that's the reason, the lack of involvement in politics, that's the reason why the UK is behind in terms of the Chinese getting involved in politics compared to the rest of the world?
I suppose also, if you look at the breakup of the Chinese community in the UK, it's actually quite different and quite unique. I say there are sort of maybe 4 distinct Chinese groups in the UK. The first group of Chinese actually sort of came to UK, really came after the Second World War from Hong Kong. So they're mainly Cantonese speakers. They're not terribly skilled. So they came over here back to UK with their British employers. This was probably in the 50s and 60s. And then in the 70s and 80s, the Chinese from Malaysia and Singapore came over here to study because they were discriminated back home, because they weren't allowed to go to local university, because they were the color of the skin wasn't right, and so on and so forth. A lot of discrimination against the Chinese, so they came here. And then the fourth group, mainly from mainland China, in the 90s and noughties. And then you've got the fourth group, which are the British-born Chinese. So you look at each of these distinct groups. The Hong Kong Chinese, mainly Cantonese, yeah, they get by with colloquial English and all that. The Chinese from Malaysia and Singapore, English-speaking, mainly skilled, professional, because they came here to study, and because they experienced form of discrimination, and also they knew what the democratic process were, so they tend to be more political active. And then obviously from mainland China, which is pretty much split down the middle, 50% of them who are here don't want to get involved in politics at all because they want to make as much money as they can. And the other 50% says, oh, this is really quite refreshing. You mean I can criticize the government without being arrested? I want to have some of that. So you look at the four distinct groups. I mean, the people from Hong Kong, yeah, I mean, they do their business and everything else. Are they more involved in politics? Only a minority. From Malaysia and Singapore, yes, a majority of them are actually very interested in politics. Mainland China, 50%. The British-born Chinese, now that's encouraging. And I think now I see more and more of them being more politically active, and that can be only good for the community.
Now we'll talk about your role in politics with the Chinese community in the UK specifically. Could you give me a brief background and history for the Chinese for Labour Group?
Right. The Chinese for Labour Group first started in 1996 as a very informal group. It was founded by Tony Blair's sister-in-law, Katie Blair, as a means of getting the Chinese community together who believes in Labour values. It did a lot of fundraising to help the main party. And since then, it's obviously evolved. I got to know the group initially through Katie Blair and through the Labour Party. And I was still running my business then. I wasn't able to give the group sufficient time. And I supported them in all the activities and everything else. And when I sold my business in 2006, my publishing business 2006, I thought, right, okay, this is something that I can help with. And they approached me to help lead the group to increase our profile and so on and so forth. I took on the chair with three main objectives. One is to increase membership of the group. Second is to engage more proactively with the Labour Party. And third, which is the most important, is to ensure that we have enough Chinese candidates to put themselves forward for selection and election. So when I took over, the group was all right. We had about sort of a couple of hundred members. We've now increased membership to over 3,000 supporting members. And we are now a fully fledged affiliated society within the Labour Party. What that means that we are engaged in any policy discussions, and we can submit our policy ideas and all that to the party for consideration in manifesto development and so on and so forth. And we engage with before that with number 10 now, the Leader's Office. So we update the Parliamentary Labour Party as to what's happening in the Chinese community, who are candidates, potential candidates and so on. So we are doing that. And now I'm pleased to sort of say that we have two candidates with Chinese heritage who have been selected in the next year's general election. One is Sarah Owen, whose mother is Chinese, and she was born in Hastings, and she's been selected to fight for the Labour Party in Hastings, which is a marginal seat. It was Labour before we lost in 2010. And the other one, Rebecca Blake, whose father is Chinese. She's a local councillor. She's been selected to fight for Labour in Redditch, which also was Labour. We lost in 2010. So these two candidates now are our hope to be, hopefully we will have our first Chinese Labour MPs next year. Fingers crossed. But if that happens, I would have achieved my third objective, and then it's time for me to step down. But I've been involved with the Chinese group now coming up to 10 years. And it's been challenging and satisfying. Challenging in the sense that, look, like anything else, it's trying to encourage members to go out and campaign or put themselves forward for selection. I always encourage the young people, is that if you haven't experienced any political campaign, try it. You'll love it. One weekend, come with us, go door knocking, delivering leaflets. It is probably the most satisfying thing that you've ever done. Yeah, you get a few doors slammed in your face, but you laugh about it, and you go further down, a couple of doors later, people welcome you, talk to you about what is going on in their community and all that. And I think everyone should experience that whole political campaigning. It is so much fun. You have comradeship, and then you make a lot of new friends, and it's a fantastic feeling ever.
You mentioned earlier that two candidates were female Chinese. Have there been any male Chinese? Because you said how it's not really about gender, but about ethnicity.
Yeah.
Surely there's less female Chinese than there is male. Why is that?
Actually, I mean, we've had male candidates in the past before, but surprisingly, I mean, this time round it's more the women candidates that are more, how shall I say, putting themselves forward more than the men candidates. I suppose like anything else, it's just a matter of phase. Actually, it goes through phases. Yeah.
So those points you mentioned about your role in the group, is there anything further you'd like to add about what we do?
Well, I mean, we as a group, I mean, other than sort of encouraging more Chinese to put their name forward as candidates, we also share with our members as to what the Labour Party is doing. And we do have also an international network whereby we work with the international socialist groups within various countries. Take, for example, Australia. I mean, we have an ongoing relationship with the Australian Labour Party to find out what they are doing with the Chinese community there so that we can learn, why are they so successful, or rather, why are they more successful than us, and actually sort of embrace some of the things that they do in reaching out to the members or the communities. Yeah, so we've got an international outreach as well. And we do organize events, whether it's fundraising or educational. Every now and again we'll get hold of a Labour minister, shadow minister, to sort of say, look, come and talk to our youth on immigration, on higher education, or whatever it is. So yes, we do that.
In the history of the group so far, what do you think are the key achievements and moments of the history of the group?
In 2008, we had probably the largest number of Labour Chinese councillors. I think we had about 8 of them, mainly in London. But unfortunately, most of them lost their seats the following election because of Iraq War. So it's unfortunate. Since then, we've been slowly building up our base. And also, one of our achievements really is we were recognized by the National Labour Party for our community work. I don't have a plaque here, but we were given a plaque that basically commended us on our achievement in reaching out to the community, encouraging the Chinese community to register to vote. Because it's not so much, voting, but they've got to register as well. And amongst amongst ethnic minority, I think the Chinese have got the highest non-registration. So it's not so much about, whether you vote or not, you've got to register. So it's trying to encourage them to register to vote is quite challenging.
I think you mentioned why that is such a problem with the Chinese ethnic minority, but what are the problems? Why they are discouraged?
I think it's an educational process. I think most Chinese think that, oh, if they do not register, no one will have their records. And they think that their records will be passed from one department to another. And it's a shame, because the thing is, it's not the case. So we, the Chinese for Labour, we are working with the Electoral Commission, and we've published leaflets and all that, multilingual, to sort of say, look, if you register, your details are kept. It's not shared with anybody. So it's just going out there, talking to them, encouraging them to register. And it's one of those things that voting is not compulsory. So if people don't want to vote, there's nothing you can do. But what I do most of the time is I say to these people, I say, look, it is your right. Why are you giving up your right so easily? Register and vote, irrespective of which party you want to vote for. Okay, once you heard everybody's manifesto or campaign and you don't feel like voting for anybody, then fine, don't vote. But at least register yourself.
So do you believe that there's an improvement with they're inclined to be politically active? There's an improvement in that?
I think there are slowly. I mean, look, the Chinese, there is this common saying that, the Chinese are always seen but not heard. Which is true, you see the Chinese everywhere. But you never hear them complain about anything. In fact, there are a lot of issues impacting on the Chinese community. I mean, one of the things that we are working on is this whole thing about gambling. I mean, gambling addiction is leading to domestic violence. Domestic violence is leading to mental health. And this really quite prevalent within the Chinese community. But the trouble is, because the Chinese have got this face-saving culture, is that, oh, if something happens at home, I don't want to share this with everybody, I bring shame to myself and all that. So because of this, the authorities do not know of the issues that are impacting our community. And I always say, look, if you do not stand up to say these are the problems you have, no one else is going to say it for you. So it's important that Chinese leaders, whether it's business leaders, community leaders, work together for the benefit of the community. And one thing I can say is the Chinese women in the various community centers and associations that are doing fantastic work, all without much state support in helping the community. There are examples in London itself, whether it's Camden, Islington, Hackney. They do a fantastic work for the Chinese elders. They go there, have the Chinese lunch, Chinese meal rather, watch Chinese DVDs, read Chinese papers, play mahjong, and so on and so forth. Those are things that the community do very well. And these are things that I think as a community we should feel very proud of. And we should support each and every one of them. Unfortunately, the ugly side to the Chinese community is we are a very selfish community. And sometimes our selfishness does us no favors whatsoever.
So do you think the reason they're not as outspoken, they're seen and not heard, is because of the difference with Asian and Western values? They have a different mentality, perhaps.
Yeah, I suppose it is. I mean, I suppose it's also very much just of the Chinese culture, isn't it? It's this face-saving. It's, look, if I've got a problem, I'll try to solve it myself. I don't want to wash my dirty linens in public. And I don't know. I mean, it impacts on all ethnic communities. Don't get me wrong. It's not something that only happens in the Chinese community. But I think what is important is trust. I think if there's trust there, then the Chinese elders will slowly open up. I'll give you an example. If, let's say, you get a Chinese elders who's got problems, health-wise, very few of them will go down to the local GP. Because number one, the English is not very good, so they may need translation. And they don't want to trouble people with interpreters and so on and so forth. Secondly is they would go to the Chinese community and say, look, I've got this problem, can you help me out? So it's easy for them to run back to their local community to seek for help. Nothing wrong with that. But the local community should work with the established sort of network of centers that they can help them, rather than taking on board, everything that they don't have time or money to do, really.
How do you think you
I think the change comes through exposure, and unless the Chinese community confronts itself and say, look, we have got problems in our community. Gambling addiction is the #1 problem in our community. Then, only can we actually start repairing and getting help, the necessary help. And likewise, domestic violence or mental health. We need to say that there are problems itself. Look, the Chinese community is a very successful community. It integrates very well. The children do very well in school. We don't really commit too much crime or break the law and all that. So as a community, we do well. But there are a lot of things that are still wrong with the community. Wrong is not the right word. There's still a lot of issues that the community finds it very difficult to come to face with. And I think we have to address it ourselves. Take, for example, doing fundraising amongst the Chinese community is actually very difficult. The Jewish community is a much smaller community than the Chinese community, but it's the most well-funded charity, the Jewish care charity ever. I mean, if you look at the Chinese community and say, look, let's come together and let's fundraise and do something for the community, it's going to be very difficult. That's why this saying is, the Chinese may have deep pockets, but they've got very short arms.
Okay, so for you, what is a typical day like your working hours, your key duties and responsibilities that you do daily?
Well, I start my day very early. I'm in the office about 7:30. Is to have meetings with my team to find out what's happening, what we're doing, to look at any new products, any new ideas, managing current clients. At the end of the day, it's also business development. So I spend quite a lot of my time developing new businesses. This is in terms of my professional work, and basically meeting with a lot of new clients and so on and so forth. That's the day-to-day job. In terms of my political job, it's trying to increase the prominence, the profile of Chinese for labor within the Chinese community. So I speak to a lot of journalists, I speak to a lot of Chinese community leaders, and I try to encourage them to sort of, get engaged politically. I always say, look, getting engaged politically doesn't mean that you have to be a member of parliament or a councillor. There's so many things you can do. So get engaged with it. Mm.
So what out of the ordinary, other than your typical day, you said that you just came back from Madrid, do you take work trips a lot?
Yeah, in fact, I've cut down a lot of my traveling. I used to do, or rather I used to travel once every 5 weeks, thereabouts. But now I travel probably once. There is abroad rather than internal in UK, once every 6 weeks, 8 weeks now. Yeah. Well, the thing is, even though, I'm cutting it down because of family. I've got a young daughter who's 8 years old, and I want to spend time with her. Nowadays also is, if I do any traveling, I try to do the minimum amount of traveling. Instead, I go there, finish as fast as I can and come back, rather than doing sort of 1 week or 10 days trips.
What is your working relationship like with your colleagues and at the Chinese for Labour group?
What do you mean by that?
You have relationships with those that work within the group.
Yes.
You've been working there for years, obviously. Your relationships with them, do you see them on a daily basis?
Oh, right, okay. Well, as far as the group is concerned, I mean, we meet up once a month to have our executive committee meetings. But we are on emails almost every other day. I mean, we look at campaigns. And when we meet up, it's basically going through what are things that we want to do, and also what things that we've done, so feedback. So, yeah, we do meet up regularly, yeah. And I've got a very strong executive committee, people who are bringing different skills to the table. And it's so important that you have the people with different skills and all that. Because at the end of the day, every one of them is actually volunteering their time. So there's only so much they can do. but every one of them do a lot.
And your role in the group, do you interact much and collaborate much with the other political parties at Westminster?
Yeah, I mean, I know all the other various groups like the Chinese Lib Dems and the Chinese Conservatives. Yeah, we do have occasional meetings socially. And like most things, there are a lot of things that are cross-party. So sometimes you can't work audit yourself. I would take, for example, the issue on gambling. I work with my colleagues from the Lib Dems and the Conservative and say, look, how do we address this? Encouraging registration has to be cross-party. So yes, there are cross-party relationships that we work together in terms of that impact the community, generically. Yeah.
And how would you say your group is, their actions are different compared to the others? Or what are you doing differently with the other Chinese groups?
Oh, I can't speak of the other Chinese groups, but I think, like everything else, I think all of us have got similar purpose. We want to encourage more of the Chinese to vote for the party we believe in, and we share, I suppose, our different policy with the members and so on and so forth. So I think the Lib Dems will do their thing, the Conservative will do their thing, we will do our thing. When it comes to elections, I mean, I want to get as many people voting Labour as I can.
For the years you've been involved with the group, do you feel like it's changed a lot while you've been there?
Yes, it has. It has in the sense that, for the better actually, the National Labour Party now recognises the contribution of the Chinese community in UK, and there is a link. So if any, say, minister wants to, a shadow minister wants to reach out to the Chinese community, they work with us. Take, for example, like last year we took Chukka Omuna, who was the shadow business secretary to China. It was his first trip to China. We organised his itinerary. We were very lucky to organise a meeting for him to meet with the Chinese vice president. He met up with the most wealthiest man in China. So these are things that we work with the party. So compared to the past, which was very much, oh, we know who you are, to now, we want to work with you to reach out to the community.
Okay, and could you tell me a little bit about your role of the executive committees of the EA and
Right. You see, within the Labour Party, we've got the Black ethnic minority group. And it is a group set up by the Labour Party some time ago to look at the ethnic minority interests. I was elected to the group last year. Basically, it's sort of, to help them raise their profile within the Labour Party and the wider community itself. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, all of us are trying to do the same thing, whether it's in the Chinese community, the black community, or the Asian community. So I believe very strongly that there are some best practices that we can learn from each other. So what I'm doing there is to say, let's share our best practices, rather than reinvent the wheel. Why don't we say, oh, we want to do this. Have you guys done that before? If so, what are the things that I should be looking out for that I don't need to worry about or do not get into, or whatever it is. So best practices are very important. So that's what I do.
So that's your duties and responsibilities every day. How was it you're involved with the group?
Well, it's a voluntary group. I mean, that's the sort of governance side of it. But in terms of the policy side of it, yeah, we have got some policy meetings looking at various issues that impact. If, let's say, it's a Labour Party policy, how will it impact on the black and Asian black and minority? So, yeah, we looked at the policy discussions as well.
And how has the BAME Labour, has it been effective politically, and how has it been?
It's been effective, very, very effective. It says that it's been instrumental in ensuring the Labour Party have got ethnic minority representation, and it's pushed for black candidates in different seats. And it's also supported by various unions, so to ensure that representation is at all levels. So it's been very, very effective, yes.
And do you think the British Chinese people have similar concerns to other ethnic minority groups in the UK?
Yes, I think so. I don't think there's anything unique to the Chinese community which is not unique to the other ethnic minority group. But having said that, I think as a community, there is a lot more we can learn from the other ethnic minority group in terms of coming together. See, one of the things that the Chinese community is not very good is coming together. And I don't know whether this is, suspicion, fear, I don't know what it is. But everybody within the community, they do their own thing. But when something comes together, impact on the community, and we bring them together, they're very afraid to be seen with one voice. I'll give you an example. I mean, like Jeremy Clarkson, he made some silly comment about Chinese community about 18 months ago, like the Chinese are subspecies, eat all these things and all that, why are they, whatever. I was very angry. I sort of said, look, we must do something about it. So I put together an article, it appeared in the Independent. And I questioned, I said, where are the Chinese leaders? The Chinese business leaders, community leaders, or political leaders? We should be taking a stance on it. Because there's no point us accepting this as face value and say, just ignore him. Because if we do not take this up, we are letting our children down. Because when our children or grandchildren, they grow up in this country, they'll still be facing the same thing if we do not challenge these people who make silly comments like that. And it's one of those things that sometimes, the invisibleness frustrates me. And this is something that the Chinese community should learn from the black and Asian community. If it happens to the black and Asian community, there'll be demonstration in Trafalgar Square. We just kept quiet.
So how does the BME group then balance the concern between the different ethnic minorities?
Well, it's up to the individual on the committee itself to bring up the cause. Take for example the recent Jeremy Clarkson again with the actress Somi Gomez. And we brought it up and says, look, we should write a very strong letter to protest against Clarkson and write it to the BBC. And so there are things, racism is one of the things that we take. Immigration is another area that we look at as well. And then obviously access to finance for business people and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of these things that we look at and how it impacts. So as like any group, there is only so much you can do. But nevertheless, it's a group that can bring the things together, issues together, and then try to get the Labour politicians to take it to the next level.
So how do your duties at the BAME Labour Group fit in with your duties for the Chinese for Labour Group? Very much intertwined.
Yeah, it is. Basically, there are certain things that we, Chinese for Labour, there isn't so much we can do as a group. But, and there are certain things that we should be working with our other ethnic minority group within the Labour Party. Take, for example, immigration. Yeah, the immigration issue impacts on everyone. It's not a Chinese thing. It impacts on everyone who wants to come over to this country, either to study, to live, to work, or whatever. At the same time, because immigration is so linked to work, to employment, and to certain businesses within the sector itself. Take catering, for example, whether it's the Bangladeshi takeaways or the Chinese takeaways. They've got a problem in recruiting chefs. So, yes, we can say that it is impacting on the Chinese takeaways, which is only one part of the entire catering industry. So we work with our brothers and sisters in BAME and says, look, collectively can we put together a position paper on how the Labour Party should address this issue or that issue. So that's what we do.
I've heard that the UK has limited immigration for Chinese chefs, and that's having a huge impact on catering. is that something that the group would do?
Yeah.
So politically, that we should change this?
Well, yes, I mean, it's an ongoing thing. I mean, look, it's a sort of, chef is classified as sort of semi-skilled, which is a tier 2 category, which has been going on for some time. And yes, unfortunately, I mean, it's one of those things that is impacting on the Chinese catering sector, but I think it's also impacting on the other ethnic catering sector as well. But it's a shame because London has become very much a culinary center of the world. You get some of the best Chinese restaurants in London. Likewise, some of the best Japanese restaurants or Thai restaurants as well. It's a shame that if we do not maintain that standard, we will lose out. But having said that, there are certain things that the catering industry should do. Relying solely on foreign chefs is not the answer. I think what the catering sector should do also is, yes, by all means, apply the necessary work permit to bring in a foreign chef or whatever, but also do train the local people to cook the thing. Look, I've been to Chinese restaurants in Australia, which is actually not cooked by Chinese guys, but cooked by a white Australian. Food was fantastic. So these are things that you can sort of, share and actually sort of impart the skill to. So it's a partnership. Government or political parties can do some things, but the industry themselves have got to also do their own thing. So relying on foreign input all the time is not the answer.
Could you tell me about your work with the Academy for Parliamentary and Policy Studies, Civil Service College?
Well, this is my day job. I mean, basically, the Civil Service College is a training organization. We provide training for civil servants in central government, local government, and the non-departmental public bodies. The Academy for Policy and Parliamentary Studies is our think tank. See, what we do is also, we look at issues relating to training within the civil service itself. Why do civil servants need training? What kind of training do they require? And how best to upskill themselves? So that's the think tank side of it, where we have now started on a couple of research projects and all that. But at the Civil Service College itself, we train not only civil servants from UK, but also overseas. We had civil servants from Indonesia, in fact, next week, Bangladesh, and then the following week, I think we've got Vietnam or something. So we do train people from civil servants from overseas, either to come over to UK or we send our trainers overseas as well.
So would you say that's your key duties and responsibilities as an executive chairman, and that's what you carry out daily?
Yes, that's my day job.
And how do these activities fit in with the Chinese for Labour group?
Oh, they're different. They're distinct. They're not related at all. In fact, one shouldn't bring politics into work. So, I mean, it's important that one should be non-political when it comes to work, because at the end of the day, it's important that you offer your training to everyone and not any one particular political group.
So, which field would you say that you enjoy the most and you take more passion in, the business side of things?
I think both. I think you've got to feel passionate for both. Because if you don't feel passionate for any, then don't do it.
Very true. Okay. What other organisations are you involved with, such as your Future First and Left Foot Forward organisations? Could you tell me a bit about that?
Well, Future First is a social enterprise organisation. And what we do is we use former pupils of the school to go back to the school to provide career advice, mainly in state schools. I mean, as you know, career advice is very patchy in the school sector. Private schools have better delivery of career advice. And since 2008, Future First have gone from strength to strength. And we are now rolling out these projects to over 500 schools in the UK, and that's doing really well. Left Foot Forward is basically a left of centre progressive bloc, and it's nothing more than people posting articles on the website on a sort of progressive position. And my involvement is basically, I know the guys that run it, and I'm a non-executive director. I'm also involved in various charities. One is the Council for Education in the Commonwealth, which promote education irrespective of the primary, secondary, tertiary in developing countries of the Commonwealth, looking at also how we can learn from each other in terms of curriculum development. And the other one is a book charity called Book Trade Benevolent Fund. And what we do is that, people who work in the book trade have fallen on difficult times. The charity is there to help them. So I'm one of the trustees looking at how to deliver funds and all that, grants to help people out.
And is that something that you do more in the long term rather than on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, I meet up once a month with them. That's about it, yeah.
And how do those activities fit in with Chinese for Labour, or doesn't it have to?
I wear so many hats. So each of the time when I meet somebody, I've got to wear different. I cannot bring my politics into any of the things I do. It has to be very different.
Okay. How important is it to promote the interests of the Chinese for Labour Party, and how does it improve the lifestyles of the Chinese community?
Well, it's one of those things. Look, we believe in social justice and fairness. That's what we believe in the Labour Party. And through the Chinese for Labour, all of us believe so. So when whatever campaign or event that we do, we promote that. So the more people that attend our events will know that we stand for fairness, we stand for social justice, we stand for equality. And that's what we, Chinese for Labour, stand for.
And what are the key issues and concerns of the British Chinese constituents in the UK? What would you say?
Well, other than the ones I mentioned earlier, I mean, look, there will be issues coming up every now and again, but the community just have to address it. And they have to help themselves rather than letting other people do it for them.
What key political campaigns have you seen during your role, like the key campaigns that you put forward in the group?
Well, it's basically voter registration is very important. And the European election that's coming up, we will go out there to explain to people why it's important to vote. And running up to the general elections is to go out there and campaign for Sarah and Rebecca to get elected.
Okay, this section I'm going to ask you a few things about culture and Chinese identity. How important do you feel your Chinese culture and your heritage is, and how do you incorporate it into your daily life?
Oh, that's a tough one. Look, I think it's important that everybody knows who they are, where they come from. I instilled that in my 8-year-old daughter, whose mother is Indian from Trinidad. It's important that everyone knows, where they come from and their heritage. But at the same time also, one shouldn't let culture be a hindrance in one's work. So it's a balancing thing. In this, I mean, look, we are in Britain. There's English culture and there is Chinese culture. Do the cultures clash? Of course it does. But then it's up to the individual to accept or to, I suppose, adopt which culture they feel best. And I'm in no position to tell anyone which culture to adopt.
So how do you feel because you said in a Western environment you have to adapt and you have to balance. So the Chinese community, how do you feel they are coping with this sort of Western and Eastern cultural clash?
I think the younger British Chinese, I think it's not much of an issue for them really. I think the older generation perhaps may have got a problem with some of the culture in terms of gay marriage, for example, homosexuality, and to a certain extent, I mean, freedom of speech, whereby people can say anything. At the end of the day, it's up to the individual which one they want to adopt. But I believe that UK is very progressive, and if this is your country, you just have to accept that.
You said that you try and instill it with your daughter, since she's half Chinese, right? So, does she understand what you feel is important in terms of her Chinese culture and her heritage? Do you feel like she knows the background well?
Well, I mean, other than talking to her and sharing experiences with her, I mean, she's learning Chinese. Hopefully she'll speak more Mandarin than I do. And I think that's important, that, like anything else, to understand the culture, you've got to understand the language. So she learning not only to read, but to write Chinese, I suppose helps her understand the Chinese side of her. But as far as the Indian side, I'm afraid, her mother is 5th generation Indian in Trinidad. I don't think she knows anything about Indian culture. So if she doesn't know anything about Indian culture, I'm afraid Sonia, my daughter, will not know anything about Indian culture as well.
I feel that's the natural process for 5th or 6th generation for
Yeah.
someone who migrates. So do you feel like that will happen in the future with the Chinese community one day?
I'm sure it will, you know, and it's important that, you know, we have things there that people, if they want to refer to read about, whether it's books, it's films, it's important that people know what it is.
And your parents, you said you spoke English at home and very little Mandarin that you knew, but did they place importance on instilling culture and to make sure that you had your traditions or values?
Yeah, I mean, look, the traditional values are respect the elders, you know, law and order, work hard. I think those are all universal values, really. It's not a distinct value that is only Chinese value. I don't think there's any ethnic value that doesn't promote hard work, respect, law, doing the right thing, and so on and so forth. So those are all universal values.
Very true. So do you have family overseas and back in Malaysia?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Your brothers and sisters?
Yeah, my brothers and sisters are in Malaysia. I've got another brother in Switzerland. I've got cousins in Australia, New Zealand, Canada. Yeah.
So everywhere.
They're pretty everywhere, yes. That's why Skype comes in handy.
Do you place importance on keeping in touch with them?
Yes, I mean, as much as one does, I think, you know, within one's availability, it is important to keep in touch. I mean, the whole social media thing actually helped a lot compared to maybe 20, 30 years ago, where, you know, if you don't write a letter or don't telephone, you know, you can post something on Facebook or Twitter and everybody knows what you're doing. So that helps a lot. It doesn't take a lot of time as well to do something.
So do you travel back home often?
Yeah, I do, every year, yeah. So we take turns to travel to Malaysia and Trinidad to visit Sonia's mother's side.
And how was that experience for you, meeting someone from a different cultural background?
Right.
Okay. What you've mentioned your opinion about families retaining their culture in the Western world and keeping connections with family back at home. Do you feel like your values or your perceptions of it clashes with the Chinese community because you're politically active with the community itself? Do you feel like they have different beliefs than you do?
No, not quite. I mean, look, I think I know what Chinese values are, and at the end of the day, one respects the values. If there's an issue that may clash with the values, one try and find a way to sort of discuss about it and not get aggravated or annoyed about it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk about personal experience that you've had. Have there been any highlights or turning points in your career that stand out to you?
Everything I've done in my career I'm proud of it. So, you know, I've been very proud of building up a business that became UK's largest independent law publishing company. Personally, being able to give something back to the sector is a personal achievement. So I don't think there's any specific event or thing I did that I'm proud of what I've done.
And are there any significant events or people that have influenced you during your political career?
Political career? Oh, yes. I mean, Tony Blair, I respect. Likewise, Gordon Brown. and also John Smith in terms of domestic politics. But in terms of international politics, actually I do have a lot of respect for Lee Kuan Yew, who is I think he's still alive, the first Prime Minister of Singapore. Of course, Nelson Mandela and all that. Of course, I mean, these are people, role models you learn. I mean, I read a lot of their writings and everything else, and it's so inspirational.
And what is your attitude and ethics concerning work, and where did this attitude come from? You said that it's from your parents and your family that taught you these ethics.
How, you mean working hard?
Yeah, your community, your friends, do you get this from them, or is this coming from a young age?
I think it's very much an individual thing, and I think most ethnic minority people have got this hard-working ethics in them. And I've always believed in this: if you want to get by, you've got to put in the hours. No one's going to sort of put everything on a silver plate and say, "Here you are. This is what you're going to do." You've got to work at it, and you've got to definitely go all out to get it.
How does your work life fit in with your family life? You say you're travelling less now.
One tries to balance. I mean, obviously, I live in Oxfordshire, so I try to get back to sort of see Sonia when she gets back from school. But at the end of the day, you make sacrifices, and hopefully, make the best decision.
What do you do for recreation?
Oh God. What, with family or with myself? Well, with my family, we normally go on holiday, or we go sit down, just talk, go for meals. Personally, I love racing cars. Yeah, and I used to fly, but I no longer do it because it's too dangerous.
Any other hobbies you have that you do daily, like?
Oh, daily? I know I should be doing more exercise. I should be going to the gym more, but I don't.
So, what do you have your expectations for your daughter? I know what she inspires you to do.
She inspires me to do.
What do you think inspires her?
All right.
What do you expect?
Look, I don't think we are one of those typical sort of Chinese or Asian family. I think my wife and I, Geeta and I, we're pretty relaxed with the way that Sonia goes through, her school or work. Yes, discipline is important. So we instill a discipline in her. We instill hard work in her. We instill respect in her. So far, she's not let us down yet. She's only 8, so she's got plenty more years to go.
And what do you expect in terms of her education in the future? Do you be similar to yours?
Look, I'm not going to prescribe what she should be. It's up to her. And as long as she's given the right opportunities, it is up to her what she wants to be.
I think we have covered everything. There may be one question I didn't ask you. What were the best and the worst things about working for the Chinese labour groups or your organisations, the cons and the pros?
It's difficult to sort of say, oh, this is a con or this is a pro. Look, when you lead a group or when you take on the responsibility of leading a group, it comes with all challenges. But you've got to face a challenge or challenges and make the best of it, because if you don't, then don't take it on. I suppose the satisfying thing is to see people recognizing the group for what it is, and for politicians to come up and say, you have done a fantastic job. That's very satisfying.
I'm just thinking if I need to ask anything else. Do you feel like we've covered everything? Do you want to mention anything further?
I can't think of any. If you go back and you think, right, okay, I've never covered this, give me a telephone call. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for participating in our project.
My pleasure.
It was a nice time sharing your memories with us and everything. So
My pleasure. Thank you.
So